Good morning. It is, I think, one of our favorite times of the year here on this particular live show, the Penn State Football Recruiting Show. BWI Live, I'm Thomas Rankar. It's junior days where we get to see en masse the players that Penn State is bringing to the program and to the university. We're talking about that today, and of course we're talking about Kemon Spell, all the things that have been brewing with recruiting now that the team is laser focused on the future. Ryan Snyder here with me right now. We'll be getting to Sean Fitz in a little bit. He's got dad duty because of a 2-hour delay here in State College. Ryan, you live in Harrisburg. Not as bad down there, apparently, huh?
Yesterday was miserably cold in the morning. Today it felt like freaking spring, and it's like 32. So that's how cold it was, obviously. But no, our kids are off to school. I have a feeling they will not be off to school on Monday, but yeah, excited for that snowstorm. But I don't think it's going to impact Penn State junior days too much. It looks like that's going to be more of a Sunday, late Saturday night, Sunday kind of thing. And that should allow them to get on campus because there's going to be a lot of junior days throughout Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, wherever it may be, that I think are going to get impacted by that. So I guess it's one of the few times where it's a good thing to be at State College compared to down
at least
south.
On Saturday. Yeah. So it's interesting because I've heard anywhere from 8 to 20 inches of snow, and I've heard it from anywhere from Saturday morning till Sunday night. It's been, the only thing that we've been told is that it's going to be a lot of snow and it's coming this weekend. So interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how, and lucky for Penn State that it doesn't affect junior days this weekend, because this is the first time they've had a chance to bring these guys to campus and do this because of the transfer portal. We've talked about that here on the show. So we'll be getting to that in just a little bit. But I do want to bring this up because you were following along with this. You've been writing about Elijah Reeder for a while. He committed to the program yesterday. We did a full deep dive into Reeder yesterday afternoon as a breaking news video when he committed to the Nittany Lions. But I want to give you a chance to talk about Reeder and what you see from him and what you've learned about him throughout the process of this recruitment from Iowa State now to Penn State.
Yeah, one of the more intriguing storylines, I think, of this 2026 class. I mean, again, 2 months ago, his best offer was Monmouth. I mean, it was right around this time where Iowa State, 2 months ago, that Iowa State offered him. And now he's going to the biggest school in the Northeast as far as football programs are concerned, right? It's just kind of like, wow, talk about a 2-month whirlwind there. Looks to be, I mean, testing numbers and all those kind of things are limited, right? 6'6", 210, we know, 4'6", 40 at the Monmouth camp this past summer for a player that size is pretty good athletically, right? 6'8" wingspan. There's some things there that we know and pop off, right? I don't expect him to be a Jazz Coleman and come in and make an immediate impact or anything like that. He's going from, Central Regional, which is kind of central, out on the beach, New Jersey, which is, South Jersey, North Jersey. That's where the big time programs are. So it's going to be a major step up for him competition wise and all those things. But, I think there's a reason he's actually the highest ranked of the Iowa State guys that came over, really. And it's because the more you dig into it, there's a lot of really intriguing, measurements and things like that. But we'd love to know, obviously, some other things like that and, shuttles and broad jumps and all that. But, from what we do know, it's enticing. 50 tackles, 19 tackles for loss last year, 8 sacks this past season. And, I think, look, defensive end is one of the rooms right now where I feel like they need more upperclassmen than underclassmen. It's a
for sure.
Room.
Especially even if they're, as you mentioned, he's not going to be a Chaz Coleman where he might come in and contribute because at 210, and with his size and frame, a dude that's going to need a couple years in the weight room. So not even a freshman who has kind of that developmental track of somebody who's going to be in the rotation early in his career.
No, yeah. It'll be interesting. I'm so intrigued with so many of these Iowa State high school players, right? Former Iowa State signees. Certainly the Bryson Williams, Amari Jackson. There's a couple guys that do jump out a little bit, and Elijah Reed is one of them. But we just have to respect or understand the fact that a lot of these guys kind of went under the radar a little bit. So from a scouting perspective, there's just not as much there as what we're used to seeing. But Matt Campbell and the staff have done a really good job with that over the years at Iowa State, and you have to believe that that's going to continue to some degree here, at least with a handful of these guys. And really, when you're talking recruiting classes, right? Like, you're just trying to hit on half of them, really. I mean, it's maybe a little bit over that, but that's kind of how I always look at it. There's been plenty of high 4-star guys that don't pan out, right? And plenty of rated 3-stars who do. So that's kind of the goal.
I know that I've been kind of banging on this. I'm really impressed with these athletes that they're finding that come in, like, to not have the recruiting budget and to not have the recruiting profile, and yet to find a Bryson Williams or some of these other players that are good football players with big frames and traits that are NFL level at these positions, and to have one in the trenches too with Elijah Reeder. I just I'm now, when they have the resources to put these guys in the best position possible, especially, these defensive ends, to get them in a position to rush the passer more frequently, I'm having a hard time seeing the downside here. Like, I understand that you don't have some of those sure bets. There aren't the, Kevin Browns in this class because of the transition and all that, but these are some really, really good prospects that they've found. And there is, I think, a strong correlation between Matt Campbell and his recruiting staff and where Penn State was for most of the time under James Franklin. I'd say where they were identifying traits and talent and finding guys that were not necessarily the 5-stars, but eventually, by the time Penn State was done recruiting them, they became high 4-stars because of the attention they got. And now, we'll see how Campbell and his staff succeed through that lens, because he's already said they had to be careful about offering guys and making things public because other schools would try to come in and poach their players already. That magnifying glass, that spotlight is going to get so much bigger here.
Yeah, I think Jasir Rogers was a great example of that, right? I mean, this is somebody who no one even knew about, right? Comes to Penn State and, he became a 4-star. Why did he become a 4-star? Well, we found out all these incredible numbers and things that he put up. And I bring that up just because of the whole, you see the Saban comment the other day, it was to talk about his 2 running backs. Oh, I forget. Who was it? Josh Downs or Jacobs and Damian Harris, I want to say. But anyway, just there was a lot of talk this week about how, we don't ever pay attention to stars. And, and a lot of guys, they're a 3-star at this school, then they become a 4-star when they go to a bigger school. And look, the big reason for that is because the bigger schools oftentimes have more resources, and then journalists like us dig on it more than
more people pay attention.
College more, exactly, and thus just the information gets out there. I mean, it's Shannon Terry had a good tweet about the other day. Shannon Terry's one who owns 0-3, and he was like, obviously our scouts do the best that they can and gathering all the information they can, but a large part of these rankings are coming from college coaches, and that's always been the case. For us, even to some degree, and really at all these kind of sites that have, or schools that are bigger, right? That have bigger sites and can dig on those kind of things. So that's all part of it. And I think you'll notice that, moving forward with more Matt Campbell classes. I also think, they are going to recruit 5-stars. Terry Smith's seeing a 5-star right now, which I thought was interesting because we've been joking all week about, are they going to go for these guys? Are they going to keep going for, some lower ranked, not as well-known players? And I just found it ironic that Terry's down in Charlotte today, checking in on Josh Dobson. He's basically the best cornerback in the country.
So speaking of some of the other players on the docket for Penn State to visit Penn State quickly, this is, I think, flown a little bit under my radar anywhere. Samson Gash taking an OV tomorrow. So in the preview of the junior day, tell us a little bit more about that. How does that even overlap with the junior day, and how does all of that kind of fit into the schedule here? What are you expecting from Gash?
It's a new staff. I don't know, T. Frank. I'm going to find out. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to answer that for the next year. I don't know. Everything's new for the next year. How are camps going to work? How are whiteout visits going to work? How are spring practice? It's all different, right? So, for example, I was talking to Elijah Reeder. We used to always get used to, like, Franklin would pair guys up with current players, right? And there'd be a player host, and they'd kind of stay. Yeah. Like, none of that happened for Reeder, right? So we're going to learn all these different things about how, staff A and staff B go about things differently. I mean, of course, Samson Gash is going to be here for 2+ days. I'm sure he'll be involved a little bit with, maybe some of the team meetings or position meetings that are going on with the junior day at the time. But at the same time, he'll get here Friday and I don't know. Maybe he's going to have to leave Saturday. The more I think about it, because there's a snowstorm coming. But he's going to be involved to some degree. But also, because it's a paid visit and they can do different things on an official visit compared to an unofficial. He'll get special treatment in other ways when it comes to dinners and different things like that. But so I do want to get into Gash a little bit, though. I mean, Gash is a great example of. I want to say too late of a riser, but like I think a lot of fans have been like, this kid visited. He's a Penn State legacy one. Two, he visited Penn State a bunch. Why did Franklin and his staff not really pursue him earlier? And I think if you look at his numbers and you look at what he's been able to do, his growth physically, and especially from a speed and track perspective, that has all really taken off since this past spring. And at least for the old staff, they were in a pretty good position with wide receivers at the time that, just kind of didn't make Gash as important as now he certainly is. So, he's committed to Michigan State right now. He's kept his recruitment open. And like I said, of course, he's a Penn State legacy. So I do think that Penn State has a very good chance at being able to poach him from Michigan State. But he is also expected, I think, to go back to East Lansing next weekend, too. So I don't know if we're going to get an answer right away. It kind of feels like this is going to be a true signing day commitment or announcement, whatever it may be. But, certainly a player that Penn State's very interested in. I think Terry Smith's been interested in for a long time. Of course, him and, Samson's dad, Sam, played together at Penn State. And there's always been a really strong relationship. And I think that's helped kind of mend not the wounds, I'd say, but certainly Samson was, I think, upset a bit that the previous staff didn't pursue him harder.
Make sure the bridge didn't burn. Like maybe it was on fire, but it didn't burn down. Make sure that there was still a link there. I don't know how to phrase this, but like you mentioned Terry there, it feels like his fingerprints are all over this of the guys they've targeted here early. And I know it makes, like, I'm not saying like it's a good or a bad thing. It just makes a lot of sense. We'll talk about Kemon Spell a little bit later, but Khalil Taylor, Gabe Jenkins, Samson Gash, like, do you get the sense he's having a big hand in the recruiting and kind of taking a big role right now here at the very beginning to make sure that Penn State gets back on track with some of these prospects in 2027?
I think yes and no. I mean, everybody's doing it now. I mean, everybody's out on the road. Obviously, Terry. Yeah. We're going to obviously Khalil Taylor, Kemon Spell, Gabe Jenkins, like they're a big talking point right now. They're all Western PA guys. So yes, of course, he's absolutely having a massive role with those guys. But, I think there's others too, like Savon Huggins and Kelvin Morrison, for example. I wrote a story on him today. Check it out on the site. Like that's a relationship there that's doing really well. And Huggins is doing great with Kemon Spell as well. So yes and no. I did find it very interesting that Terry Smith was down in Baltimore this week. I don't know if that's going to become a region for him or if he was mainly down there just for, like, Raylon Henry's at St. Francis. That was somebody who, Terry was incredibly high on. He's committed to Texas A&M now, but of course they're going to keep chipping away. Was that because of that, or is that going to become a bit more of a region for him? Time will tell. It's so many questions right now as far as, are they going to have regions, or is this going to just be kind of all positional recruiting? We'll have to figure that out with time.
Ryan, asking all the good questions I should be asking, but then if I asked you that, you'd say, I don't know. We'll find out.
I don't know, T. Frank. I don't know, T. Frank. I'm just gonna record that.
Let's get into junior days and what's coming up this weekend. For those that want to know about Kemon Spell, we're going to talk about him specifically in a little bit, but we're waiting for Fitz to do that, and Fitz got to get his kids to school. So stay tuned on that. That's coming up in just a little bit here on the show. But junior days, the title, what's going on this weekend, it's the biggest event. So tell us what's going on, the players that we need to know, and what you think the outlook for this particular weekend is. Good, sunny, snowstorm? What do you think?
I don't know, T. Frank. We're going to find out now. So look, they're certainly making.
You're killing me.
There's certainly, it's interesting to me. It's not going to be as big. I think we talked about this last week. I don't expect it to be quite as big quantity wise that what we've used to seeing. I mean, for example, Franklin's doing a junior day at VOD Tech, and I think I've already have more kids confirmed for VOD Tech than I have for Penn State, which is interesting. But it's a different approach where it's more so we're going to get these best guys here, that we possibly can, and really prioritize them more than, the overall numbers, right? So how that's different and how that results in commitments or whatever it may be, time will tell. But right now I have about, I think, a little over a dozen players kind of confirmed for this weekend, and they're all incredibly important players. Khalil Taylor, for example, Gabe Jenkins, obviously Kemon, Matthew Gregory is coming in, all really important, Pennsylvania recruits. There's also others coming in as, from the Iowa State bridge, I guess you would say.
Yeah,
right?
That's an interesting one. It feels like they're making as good of a connection as they can to bridge that, Midwest to Penn State and keep up some of those relationships that they had previously to accentuate their recruiting here regionally. Is that what you're seeing?
Especially this first year or two, right? I mean, they've been scouting these guys. Like, for example, Case Alexander is expected to be in town this weekend. Linebacker out of Oklahoma. He's the younger brother of Cooper Alexander. Of course, they know a lot about Case, right? They recruited Cooper, and I'm sure they've been kind of following Case since he was young. So it makes sense to bring a guy like him in, and same with like a Cooper. I think it's Terwillinger. I don't exactly know how to pronounce his last name. I apologize. But tight end out of South Dakota. Like, how many times have I talked about a South Dakota player coming to Penn State?
We got to Minnesota and Wisconsin a couple years.
Yeah.
That's been the
Minnesota. I thought that was South Dakota. So, like I said, they've been scouting these guys. They when they see quality players, they're going to keep recruiting those players, and we're going to see a little bit of that this weekend. But I still think the focus for the most part is really trying to get the best kind of PA regional guys on campus and really kind of prioritize them and put all of their effort into that, and see where things go when it comes to commitment perspective.
Wow. For the people listening on the podcast, Cooper Alexander, tight end from Iowa State, transferred to Penn State, is now on the roster. His younger brother, 6'3", 210. He is the 153rd player in the class of 2027, according to Rivals, 9th linebacker in the country. So, to have that relationship and to have that prior scouting and then to bring it to Penn State, that's just kind of one of these, I don't know if it's a one-off, like as you guys mentioned. I don't know that they're going to have these relationships for a while now, but that's a huge benefit that you wouldn't expect coming from Ames, Iowa. Some of the other guys that you mentioned, we could reintroduce some of these players. I want to ask you about Gabe Jenkins. I think you've mentioned him. DB, athlete, he's a phenomenal athlete. If you watch him here on the video, played option quarterback a lot for Imani Christian. How do they see him fitting into the program?
Certainly a safety. Nothing's changed there. It's interesting because Imani, I think they won by an average score this year of like 41-9, right, out of their 13 or so games. And Gabe was so important to them from a quarterback perspective that he really didn't play a whole lot of defense this year. I mean, there were games where he'd start every game on safety, but there was quite a few games where they're up 3 scores in the first quarter, and Gabe would just kind of sit out the rest of the game defensively, maybe play a few more drives offensively. But because I was talking to his coach the other day, and I was like, is it 50-50? He was playing defensive, and it was probably less than that. So just interesting from that perspective, just because it's you're going to enjoy scouting if he commits. Put it that way, T. Frank, because there's limited defensive film from this past year. But
fun!
Look, he's always been a great athlete. I mean, how many times? I think I've written 2 or 3 times now that I disagree with him being a 3-star player for Rivals. I mean, 24/7 has him as a 4-star. ESPN has him as a 3-star. I think he should be a consensus 4-star. At least that's how Penn State sees him. That's how the old staff saw him. That's how the new staff sees him. I think he's absolutely one of the best players in the state. I mean, right now we have him at 14th in the state. I'm confident in telling you he's a top 10 player in Pennsylvania for this 2027 cycle. So, yeah, we'll see where things go. I've always kind of thought that Khalil and Jenkins were the 2 most realistic. And apparently I'm going to be proven wrong on our Kemon Spell discussion from last week, because that's looking more and more realistic too. Hence why I'm waiting for Sean to come in here and make fun of me. But but Jenkins and Khalil always made sense. And Jenkins has a USC visit coming up, and more schools are coming in. Auburn, I believe, was in this past week. There's a few others, but he's always made sense to stay somewhat local. And the connection with Terry is still really strong. That's not going anywhere. Obviously, he's still part of the staff. And I think that bodes well for them long term. Whether that's a commitment in the near future or not, time will tell. But I've always felt that Gabe Jenkins and Khalil were the 2 that they had the best chance of getting back.
We'll get back to the junior days in just one second, but first we got to talk to you about My Perfect Franchise and Andy Ludicky. He's our franchise consultant here on the Penn State Football Recruiting Show. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, or just build a legacy, do whatever it is in your heart. I doubt a lot of us thought to ourselves growing up, what I want to do? I want to sit in front of a desk for 8 hours a day, and I want to stare at a screen for most of my life. Probably everyone wanted to do something fun and exciting and wanted to do a bunch of different things. Maybe not even, if you're like me, it's not just one thing. That's the beauty of this job for me, is it's all the things. It's everything I could ever want to be, because it changes every single day. If you want that excitement in your life, I'm not saying to go into podcasting. I'm definitely not suggesting that. I'm saying you should probably own your own business, because then you get to do everything. And if you have those skills, you have that expertise, Andy at My Perfect Franchise can help you find the right franchise to manage. He's done this for a long time, almost a decade now, and he has the experience to help find people in the right spots and put them in the right places. And the great thing is his service is 100% free to you, because he's had so many great leads over the years. Companies come to him to try and find quality candidates that will be successful. And this is the thing. Everyone's rooting for your success. It does not help them if you come in and the business doesn't work. So give him a call, 404-973-9901. He's going to take you through the entire process of how to buy a franchise, what this clause in this contract means, who this person is at dinner when you go out and meet the CEO, why it's important that you shake this person's hand. He probably even knows the secret handshakes. I don't know, Ryan, there's probably secret handshakes in business that I don't know about, because I'm not a business person. I'm a person on a screen for a living. So give him a call. And I'll put it up here again. And for the podcast audience, 404-973-9901 or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net to get on his calendar. Appreciate Andy. Let's get back to junior days here. Ryan, who's the next player you think fans should know? We talked about a lot of these names, but feels like a reintroduction to a certain degree. So who else are you interested in talking about?
Matthew Gregory. Let's talk about him. Of course, 56 in the country in the industry rankings, 6 foot 170, out of Owen J. Roberts in Pottstown. One of the fastest players in the country, no doubt about it. Finished second last year in the 100 meter for the 3A. I think it's like I forget his exact time. I apologize. I won't say 10-4 range, but
I think he said 10-4 on his profile. Yeah.
Yeah. Incredibly gifted player. I mean, there's some people that believe he actually could be a DB at the next level too. Penn State firmly sees him as a wide receiver, and most schools are recruiting him as such. But he's got some great offers as well. And I know Notre Dame is making a big push, right? That'll be interesting to see where all he goes and visits. But Matthew is another guy that, like, from the beginning, I thought it made a lot of sense for him to stay somewhat local, and how this transition impacts him. Time will tell. Noah Pauly's already been down to see him at least once. I'm not exactly sure if he's taken a second visit with you or not, but they're putting a big priority on Matthew Gregory right now, as they should, just like a lot of other schools are as well. So it'll be interesting to, like I said, kind of see how this transition impacts him, because I think it's Michigan, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Notre Dame. Like, those are kind of the 3 or 4 that we've kind of discussed a good bit with him over the last couple of weeks. And I know he's going to take additional visits. I don't expect him to be somebody that makes an early move, but who knows? I don't expect a lot of things to happen, and then they happen, right? That's recruiting.
Yeah. Steven says he's a little short for the new staff. I would say that that might be true, but also speed, deep threat. I think at a certain point they'll forgive the fact that he's not 6'4". But it is funny, because I had a similar thought of, like, well, they have a certain type, but the certain type also is deep receiving playmaker and a guy who can change the coverage based on his presence, and that's something that you see from a guy like Matthew Gregory.
It'll be interesting if he's like their slot guy now. Remember, like, the KJ Hamler days, and like if that's their small receivers now, like, okay, that works.
They love a slot fade. This offense loves to run the slot fade, and that would work out pretty well for Matthew Gregory. Anybody else you want to highlight here?
Lucas Rhoa, coming in from California. We've talked
super
about
interested
Lucas.
in this one.
Yeah, we've talked about him a lot. Lifelong Penn State fan. He's attended the last 2 Rose Bowls. He was at the Fiesta Bowl, I believe. A lot of family in Central PA. He lives out in Orange County, California, plays at Orange Lutheran, 6'5", 280, interior lineman. The fact that he's coming back that quickly really stands out, because we always knew he was a Penn State fan and all those things, but when the change happened, he was also really, really big on Troutwine too. So I was kind of curious to see, one, how hard does this next staff even pursue him as well? But that certainly is not going to be the case. Yeah, I think their D-line coach was just out there yesterday because Marcus Fakatu is one of the best defensive linemen in the country. I'm sure he met with Lucas a little bit, and we'll see if Ryan Clanton gets out there at some point as well. But another guy that I kind of had penciled in to be part of this class, prior to the change, and the fact that he's coming back, they're booking a cross-country flight, and he just did it like 3 days ago, right? Like, so, I mean, that kind of stands out a lot for him to get back out here and meet this new staff. And certainly as long as they pursue him hard, and which look, all indications right now are that they will, I expect him to be I think there's a very good chance he'll be part of this class, put it that way.
Yeah, and he's a fun player. Like, if you're listening on the podcast, I did encourage you here at the 25-minute mark, check out his highlights on the YouTube channel. Plays left tackle and center. I like the versatility, but more than that, I like the athleticism. I like how he flips his hips. Like all the earmarkers of a great offensive lineman with versatility to play maybe 5 positions. I know you mentioned him as an interior lineman. Athleticism says he could play outside. Size says he's probably a guard or an interior player. Mm-hmm. These are the kind of guys you love to have on a roster where you feel like the floor is high, the ceiling is high, and the flexibility where you can use them is across the board. So I think that's a interesting one that they've got such a quality prospect from California that's so interested in them here in Happy Valley, Penn State.
One thing I'll add too is so he came out in June, and it was kind of a visit for Penn State, but it was also just to see family. He's a lot of family in Central PA. Dad went to Penn State, multiple uncles, aunts. So there's a lot of ties. He camped with them twice, and the feedback I got from it was like, the kid is just a grinder and incredibly teachable, or, coachable. And that that was what they really liked, more than any athleticism thing or not. It was more of those guys. It's just he did 2 camps in 4 days, and just, literally the feedback was at the end of that final camp, we saw progression in just those 2 sessions with them. And, just someone who really took the coaching well, all those kind of things. So it's as much as it is, physically and all those kind of things, it's the intangibles I thought that, stood out the most, at least to the previous staff. And, I'm sure, the staff will see it similarly.
Yeah. That's, what's his last name again?
Rhoa, I believe.
Rhoa. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We come across a lot of names here on the recruiting show, and of course here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. It's been a bit of a transition with the new staff and some of the players they brought in from out west. And so I put together something that might be helpful for our fans. So we'll be back in just a second.
Some say they are Penn State football experts. Some say they are college football experts. And T. Frank says he's both. The problem is, I don't think he knows anything about college football names. Let's find out.
Not again!
Excuse me, sir. This is College Frank Carr, sir.
Oh, Jesus, what?
Welcome into B&E Productions' latest show. Retest college football experts on if they know player names. Joining us from the Blue White Illustrated today, Mr. Thomas Frank Carr. Sir, do you know ball?
What are you doing in my house?
Are you a Bills fan?
Obviously, I'm a...
We don't care about the Bills. They lost. What we do care about is making sure you know your college football player names. And there's 10,000 players in the portal and 700 possibly coming to your college. So who actually is on the game show we call Welcome to Happy Valley? Are you ready to play?
Maybe.
Well, let's get started. Coming on down from Syracuse, New York, making his way down as a redshirt sophomore. His last name is like Josh McDaniels. What's his first name?
I don't want to play.
Well, you are.
Okay, all right. So I feel like it's 50-50 here.
No, it's not.
It's looks like Ibn or Ivan, and Ivan sounds like Ivan, so I'm going to go with Ivan McDaniels. Final answer.
Final answer. Your final answer was really bad. It is incorrect. The correct name was Ibn McDaniels. And isn't it surprising he didn't know that one? But it's not surprising everyone knows Dallas, because everyone hates the Cowboys. So, do you know Dallas's last name?
Vakala. I'm gonna go with Dallas Vakalahai.
Vakalahai is Vakala wrong. We're looking for Dallas Vakalahi, and you are incorrect. Vakalahi. 0 for 2. Can he go 0 for 3? Coming on in now, you know this one from California.
Okay, so I feel like this one I got.
Do you now?
Hope. Siale Tapaki. It's kind of phonetic, I think. So Siale Tapaki.
He's right. He's got one. He's got one. I've got to tell our production team we need to have better name choices. Coming on in now, this man is not Mike. His first name can be shortened to Ike. Do you know his name? And time's up. His name is Ikenna Ezeogu. I'm so sorry. You ran out of time on that one. But going into number 5, you are 1 for 4, batting .250. Can you bat any better?
I hate you.
Thank you.
Okay, Via Ikakula.
Incorrect. Anyone at home would know when you drink a soda, it's also called a cola. We're looking for Via Ika-Cola.
Okay. Like Coca-Cola, got it.
Yeah. And this name...
So what is it again?
We are not going backwards today. We're only going forwards. And this one is easy because you can copy-paste it twice. His name is 2 of the same. Can you pronounce his name?
God.
Cool. You don't know that one. We're looking for Qual. I'm not surprised you don't get that one, but you might get this one because you are a white boy, and this is the last round. We call it the white boy round. Instead of giving you a Josh, we're giving you a Brett. Do you know Brett's last name?
I kind of hope I get it wrong, honestly. Brett Eskildson. Brett Eskildson.
Brett Eskildson is correct. I'm so proud of you for getting 2 of 7 names right. Really good job today, sir. And the problem is, there's only 95 more to go. Join us next week on our next show where we go rob dumpsters. That's it for B&E Productions. I'm your host, Kyle. God, you really don't know names, do you?
Dude, shut up and get out of my house. I don't know why you're even here or why I played this stupid game.
Wait, can I get a sandwich? I haven't eaten like 3 weeks.
So there you go. If you can refer to that video anytime where you're confused about somebody's name, and we'll make sure that you understand. Embarrassing myself so you don't have to in private conversation. Welcome, Fitz. How you doing? Glad you're here.
I'm fantastic. Thank you. That's why my name's very short. It's very easy to say. But I'm here. I'm happy. I'm happy to talk recruiting. I assume you guys have covered kind of everything on the first half hour. So what do we got? Where are we at?
We were waiting for the good stuff to talk to you about Kemon Spell because we've been talking about a lot of these things, and I forgot to ask you about it on Tuesday, and here we are 33 minutes into the show, and the 5-star running back everyone wants to know about. We need to know a little bit more about what's going on here because earlier this week, Steve Wiltfong put in a prediction for Kemon Spell to rejoin the Nittany Lions in a comeback that we haven't seen in quite some time in sports. 5-star running back prediction for him to join the Nittany Lions. So what do you know about this situation? What do you want to tell fans here on the show?
We sometimes get detached so far from how these things play out on a regular basis. And recruiting is different now because of the money, because of all these different factors that come into how things are different than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. There's still a lot of things that ring true to why kids pick Penn State, why kids pick any school, really. I don't know why I need to single out Penn State there. But location is a factor, family's a factor. Just kind of everything means something to someone, and it means something a little different. And Kemon Spell committed to Penn State for a reason early. It wasn't money. It was because he wanted to play in his backyard at Penn State, have his family see him play, and he had an opportunity to come to a school that's produced running backs and done so at a high level. So all those things are still true. I understand the staff changes. I understand that, that Matt Campbell did not coach Saquon Barkley, etc. But all those things still remain there. And by the way, Terry Smith does as well. And the thing that you'll learn or continue to learn or haven't learned yet, if you haven't learned by now, Pittsburgh kids and trainers and coaches and parents trust Terry Smith quite a bit. And this was one when we saw Kemon Spell visiting Notre Dame and Georgia and all these different other schools. A lot of people wanted to fly off the handle and say Penn State was not going to be a factor, but Penn State was always going to have its shot at least. Penn State was always going to have an opportunity to bring him back into the fold, bring Khalil Taylor back into the fold, bring Gabe Jenkins back into the fold. There was just going to be this haze, this cloud that they had to get through, and I think they're coming out of it. They're not completely out of it. I mean, there's still the opportunity to, host guys and pitch guys and eventually negotiate with guys, which will be, another hurdle to overcome. But all these things are still here. And Kemon Spell was a guy, no matter who he said his leader was always going to look at Penn State. We told you this, and it was hard to believe because of the situation, the darkness that Penn State seemed to be in. Yeah. So now Kemon Spell,
and the fact that he decommitted during the losing streak before James Franklin was fired, like there might have been some concern that like it was just over at that point because there's too many good schools that could build a lead because he wasn't going to be, because he decommitted the program at that particular point. And so I think what you're saying here is a huge relief to a lot of fans.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that when you take a look at his recruitment and try to parse his words, you can hear a lot of the pitches that come through in his words. So when he decommitted, was it him or Khalil Taylor that said, I want to play somewhere that wins big games? Okay. I don't remember which one it was, but you can hear we'll call it negative recruiting, but it's just recruiting. It's fine. Like you can look at Penn State over the last 12 years, 14 years or whatever, and say that they struggle to win the big games. It's not an opinion. It's kind of out there. So you hear that come across and you hear the thought process of how this all comes together from a recruiting standpoint of separating what matters. And hey, the winning big games thing matters on one level because that's your next 3 or 4 years of your life. But at the same time, it's not necessarily telling the future, right? It's not necessarily looking at this and saying this is how your career is going to play out. So there's separating fact from fiction, or not even fiction, but opinion. Separating fact from opinion. So you've got that, and you see that come across a lot when Kemon talks. And Kemon's very good about giving people time. He's very good about when he knows you, when he trusts you, actually opening up to you. And he did that down at Miami this weekend. Brian Dome put in a pick first from 24/7. He knows Brian really well. Like these things come across differently when you're talking to people that and they've sort of come back around. And like I said, Terry Smith's always been a big part of this, a major, majority part of this. But they went out there last week, saw him, saw Taylor, saw Jenkins. They've understood the investment that will come with continuing to lock down Pittsburgh, continuing to make those battles won. And here's the other thing. A lot of people are saying Kemon Spell is going to go to the highest bidder. Kemon Spell hasn't talked money with anyone yet. Like there's no situation here where he's balancing monetary offers right now. He will eventually have to do that because it's part of the process now, but it's not a situation where Penn State came in and said, I'm going to give you $1 million. This is going to be awesome. Like that's not what's seemingly swinging this one back to Penn State's way. I think there's a lot of things that go, and we've talked about that before. When you're an early commitment, that stuff, I'm not going to say it matters less because everybody wants to get paid, right? But you're picking a school based off of more than just that. And those three guys specifically pick Penn State without a number in mind. Like there are a lot of things that can change over the course of the year, and they certainly did, but they picked Penn State for different reasons. And you saw that in the class of 2026 before it got annihilated. You had 21 kids on board before official visit season, and those kids were the same for the most part. Kevin Brown didn't pick Penn State because they were the highest bidder. Kevin Brown picked Penn State because he wanted to play close to home. He wanted to play with his parents there, and there's a good opportunity for him to play. So I look at this, and as we continue to move down the path of money, there's still like a comfort factor to this. And I think that that's what you're looking at with Kemon Spell. I think I'm not going to say he like genuinely wants and hopes and dreams to play for Penn State, but he proved that when he committed the first time. Like there's a reason that Penn State's on his list. So I think they're going to continue to be a strong player here. I think there's some other things at play that we've talked about on BlueWhileIllustrated.com that are very interesting. And I just think that Penn State's got a real opportunity here. And it's, I certainly wouldn't put a percentage on it, but Penn State's moving in the right direction.
Bearded and Broke 92 says having Matt Campbell having Breece Hall to pitch isn't a bad option either. For either of you, I know that was something I think Kemon talked about, and then how does Savion Huggins play into this as well, Fitz? As I butcher another name here for you.
Yeah, you're on point today, Savon Huggins.
Savon, thank you.
That I covered in high school, which is okay. But no, you're looking at a situation where I think kind of all this stuff comes together in the wave of a new coach bump, and new coach bumps are great. I hesitate to think that they're going to get 5-star kids, like the new coach bump being a result, or excuse me, the 5-star commitment being a result of the new coach bump. But it all plays into it. You got a new running backs coach. You got a fresh start. You've got everything that you committed to before. So all that stuff kind of helps and kind of matters. So yeah, like I said, it's never just one thing, and it's never just cut and dry. But Penn State's done a nice job of coming back around, and really it's patience, right? It's patience for the coaches to not beat his door down as soon as they're hired, like to understand that this is a process, and sometimes you can spook a kid like that. So I think there's that. And I think there's the understanding that there is going to take a certain level of investment for the top level players. And I think that that's what we talked about in the show last week about Pat Kraft and Matt Campbell kind of meeting in the middle there. And I'm very interested to see how this one plays out. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We missed the percentages, big wink that I had toward Ryan. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, that's always fun. Definitely won't follow you for the rest of your career. I'm sure about that. But no, I mean, it's encouraging to see this kind of thing, see these kind of things develop.
I'm going to ask Fitz the question that I think a lot of people want me to ask, but before I do that, because I have, embarrassed myself here publicly for your entertainment, and because I'm about to do so again, please like the video, subscribe here to the Blue Eyed Illustrated YouTube channel, like it, hype it, hug it, all the things you're supposed to do with the video to help us spread the word of what we're talking about here and what we do. If you want me to do more stupid stuff like that, I can do that if we continue to grow the YouTube channel and I'm allowed to stay around and do dumb stuff. So, Fitz, the question being, what kind of timeline are we talking about here? Do you think there's a commitment in the near, distant, or far future? Like, how do you see this as in terms of the process in which we'll come to a resolution for a guy who already committed early, doesn't seem afraid of making a commitment, but is now weighing all these factors again with different?
Yeah, I'm not going to put a timeline on it because I flatly don't know. There's, like I said, there's a couple things at play here that will need to be worked out. But your approach when you've committed early and then step back from that commitment, whether you step back for the reason that most people do and say that I made a decision too early, like that was not smart on my behalf to do that, or because there's a coaching change, because there's a lot going on in this world, this atmosphere of Penn State, which is the case here. So I don't think that putting a timeline on it is, I don't want to say appropriate, but like realistic here, because those guys typically come back around, take official visits, and these don't start till April, go into June. So if Penn State, if he's got a decision before then, I think it's good news for Penn State. I think it's good to avoid. I mean, look at last cycle, right? Good to avoid him going to Notre Dame. Good to avoid him going to Georgia, wherever, Miami, USC, wherever he may go, because then the eyes get really big, and then that changes some things. So if Kemon wants to shut it down perspective, Penn State would be all on board with that, no doubt about it, but that would take out several significant factors in making that eventual decision.
Gotcha. Ryan, anything you want to add here to the conversation about Kemon?
There's been a bunch of offers going out. I have people texting me about junior days. I have not paid attention to anything you guys just did the last 10 minutes. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm embarrassed because last week I was like, I don't think Kemon Spell's coming back. And then like, bang, 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 bang. Yeah, all those crystal balls, RPM picks. But I mean, look, it comes back to Terry Smith, I think, right? And not fully, but it comes back to a player that I think wants to be at Penn State to some degree. And Terry's here and made him a priority. And we'll see where things go. I think it's very similar for Khalil Taylor and Gabe Jenkins as well. And, that's a positive for Penn State, whether that's, something we see a result of a commitment anytime soon or not. It's hard to say, man. We're dealing with high school prospects who have a lot of other schools making their case as well. So time will tell, but this weekend's going to go a long way. And, I think Penn State fans should be really excited about the fact that, Kemon was telling me he was going to go to Georgia, Vatech, Auburn. I think that was what he told me about a week ago. And then boom, changes all that to come to Penn State that first week. I think that's a very encouraging sign.
We have this in the chat, and Go Birds wants to know something, and I apologize. The reason I didn't bring it up is because I don't know what you're talking about. This was at some point in the show, and I didn't see it until late. He says
he's saying OJ
comp isn't that good.
The competition, yeah. He's talking about Matthew Gregory. I mean,
okay,
I could say that about a lot of guys. So
As
I mean,
someone who missed the first half of the show, I'm glad you guys covered that because I had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, yeah. We talked about Matthew Gregory a little bit. I mean, I could say that about a ton of players, right? I mean, it's unless they're in the DMV or maybe some of the Philly Catholic schools, North Jersey, South Jersey. There's obviously out in Pittsburgh. Like you can make that case for a lot of places. So I wouldn't overthink it too much. Speed.
Fitz, is there anything?
Speed.
Yeah, and we've seen him in person, by the way, at camps. He's really impressive as an athlete. Fitz, is there anything from the beginning of the show that you wanted to? We're in a bit of a transition here before we get to coaches on the road, and we can get anything in the chat that you guys have noticed that you want to come up with, or anything from the beginning of the show, Fitz, that you missed. You want to comment on junior days, Samson Gash, any of that stuff?
I hope they happen. I hope that I hope guys get here. Weather always a factor at this point in the calendar. Of course, we only get snowstorms on weekends, so that's always fun.
Right.
Not really. No, I mean Samson Gash coming in. T. Frank, you and I talked about Elijah Reeder, the new commit, yesterday.
Yep.
So check out our video from yesterday if you want to rehash that. But Samson Gash coming in, I think that one's very close. I think that one's and by very close, I mean I think Michigan State's in a good spot to retain him. It's just a matter of how this thing comes along, because you look at his recruitment and Penn State not offering. When we talk about detaching different elements of the recruiting calendar, Penn State's old staff did not offer him, but I think there's still probably some hard feelings there because it's Penn State, right? He's a legacy kid. Came to camp, as we've talked about before, was not the prospect he is now when he was at camp. I mean, I don't think there's any way around that, but also you don't look at him in the eye and tell him that. Like you don't sit there and say, like, if you're Penn State's new staff, you look at him and say, yeah, I don't know why they didn't offer you. Although, his father did play with Terry Smith, who's still on staff. So like, I think there's some talking out of both sides of their mouth here, that's recruiting, right? So I think Penn State's got a shot here to flip him over. But I don't think it's a slam dunk. I don't think that he's necessarily coming in to commit this weekend. I don't think that he has the typical legacy connection, and Michigan State's going to ride a new coach bump as well with Pat Fitzgerald there. So I think it's you're kind of butting heads, but this one's a lot closer than it would seem for being a legacy coming in for a last minute official visit.
Gotcha. One thing
he's going to go to Michigan State next weekend too, right? I mean, I think that's still the plan
because he was at the Polynesian Bowl last weekend. So.
One of the things that I'm going to keep asking you, just as a kind of a storyline that we've talked about, and we made a big deal of this, and everybody has made a big deal of this, by the way, nationally, locally, internationally, probably, is James Franklin's impact on the region at Virginia Tech. Ryan, you mentioned a lot of guys being at the Virginia Tech Junior Day. Is it too early to measure like the competition here? Is it going to come down to the recruit commitments? Like, how are you viewing this in the early stages of James Franklin and the pull he's having on regional recruits and guys he already had relationships with? Because you mentioned you've got an idea of the number of players down there for that junior day as opposed to the one here, and the different styles, by the way, to that.
I mean, I was probably talking about 10 or so players. I'm obviously trying to figure out who's coming to Penn State, and a bunch of them are going down there this weekend. I mean, it's different approaches, right, Sean? Like James has always been more of a quantity kind of for these events, where it feels like, Campbell and his staff are certainly going to be quality, or more so, like at least for this event, like it kind of feels like they're not really opening the door to anybody. Like, for example, there's been some players who have said they're coming that aren't going to be here. Like, I don't think the Glenville guys are coming. I think they're going to shift that more to the spring. Like they certainly, the impression I'm getting, at least from this, it might be 20, 30 guys in the end. I don't know exactly what the list is at, but from what I have right now and from what everybody's discussed with me, they are aiming to get certain specific quality players up here for just this weekend, and that's a little bit of a different approach from what we've seen in the past. But it's a lot of Virginia players, right, that you would expect to go down there. And James also had a little bit of a heads up, or a little bit of a head start when it comes to recruiting. And I know the portal and all those things were busy the last couple of weeks, but it's not a surprise that they may have more numbers wise. But at the end of the day, results on the field are going to matter, finances are going to matter. There's going to be a lot of things that impact that, and time will tell how it all plays out.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or a wrong here. Like I don't think that you can look at Franklin's approach and say that it was wrong, because you bring in more guys than Ryan. What's the number in your list right now? Sorry, I don't have it in front.
That's
of me.
right around a dozen, I believe.
Okay, so it would have been 40 there, but also in that 13 to 40, you're scouting guys. You're looking at guys that whose particular measurements may come on in, or turn you off of them, really. I look back at past junior days around this time. Anthony Donker committed, and nobody thought twice about it, right? This was a guy that kind of came out of nowhere, and now all of a sudden he's the linchpin of your offensive line. So he was not a feature visitor. He was not a quality over quantity visitor. He was a guy that staff liked, obviously, but like you can find those guys. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think there's a lot of, Penn State chatter of the Franklin way was the wrong way. And I don't necessarily agree with that in the situation. And I'm not saying that Matt Campbell's doing it wrong either. Like there's going to take some tinkering. There's going to take some fine tuning to understand what this place is and what the appeal of this place is, because genuinely, State College in January is one thing, but Ames in January is another. Like there's probably very tough to get what you can get there this early in the cycle. So I think they're going to have to work through that on both ends. So it's a tinkering process. Very, very, very typical.
Yeah. And I'll keep getting your opinion on that and the competition within the region, because it's going to be something that I think Penn State fans have a new villain. And so they're very interested in beating James Franklin at everything. And so we'll be keeping up on that one as we go throughout the recruiting process for the next couple of years.
The competition is still Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, and in my eyes, I mean that's still the schools you got to be competing with for top prospects, and I don't see that changing a whole lot. Tech will get theirs. Don't get me wrong. But.
Yeah, I mean the issue here is that the Tech staff does have relationships with a large number of Penn State's 27, 28 targets already, and you're going to have to work through that. So it's just throwing another cog in there that you have to deal with. So I think that yes, and it's going to be somewhat of an issue, because you snipe a couple of guys there that all of a sudden eats into your class.
Right. Kind of like we talked about with the other, as NIL has produced some of these new scenarios where a Rutgers or a Maryland can eat at the bottom of the tier that you're trying to shop in, and then the top of the tier is eaten in the shop. Now there's another factor in all those things. I'm interested in that, and I know that Penn State fans probably are as well. And then there's a group of them that are going to yell at me for saying James Franklin's name 3 times, and he's going to appear behind me like the boogeyman. So it is what it is. Let's talk about coaches on the road here to end the show.
Your hair like him anytime.
No, I can't. That's the thing. No, I can't. By the way, beard, totally different. Totally different facial structure. We don't look anything alike. Coaches on the road. This has been something that, Ryan, I know you've been tracking for a while. So what have you taken away from this, I think, first week of them out meeting and greeting some of the local schools? And I'm specifically curious about Matt Campbell, and if you've gleaned anything from the levels of importance or, the priorities he's placed on where he's gone first, second, third, etc.
Yeah, certainly he's been heavy in New Jersey. We've seen Philly, Pittsburgh, right? That makes a lot of sense. I haven't seen him really a whole lot in Baltimore. Like I mentioned, we saw Terry Smith down in Baltimore yesterday, whether that's a regional thing or whether he's down there probably to see Raylon Henry. If I'm being honest, the cornerback who's committed to Texas A&M, I think that was probably the main reason he was down there yesterday. But I mean, from the assistant's perspective, it's been very position heavy, not so much regional. It's, Mauser's out seeing tight ends, Jake Waters out seeing quarterbacks. Like I haven't seen a whole lot of, outside from really Terry kind of doing Pittsburgh, a whole lot of that so far. So I think whether that's the case long term or whether this is a unique situation, you have 2 weeks to build up these relationships with these top guys the best you can to get them here in the spring. Time will tell. I'm sure they're going to have some sort of regional responsibilities. I would assume that'll be the case, but right now we're seeing, more so of a position approach, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So, any notable players or any notable situations you've seen? There's been guys that have posted. I said the other day on Twitter, nature is healing, because we're getting the photos of Penn State coaches with players in their homes. The recruiting is happening. The tap is open, and all the positive, good vibes are out there. So, any of those that have kind of piqued your interest of players they've seen and they've been publicly talking to for these in-home visits?
Yeah, I wrote about two of them last couple of days, like Abraham Sesse, Christian Smith, and Deontay Lynn. Did an in-home visit with him on Monday. Went really well. His family's heading out of town, I believe, here, maybe starting this weekend or next. But he's not. It doesn't look like junior days are going to be, on the table for him. That'll be more spring visits. But getting the foot back in the door with him, he spoke really highly of Christian Smith, and I think Christian recruited him at Northwestern too. So there is a bit of a relationship there already. That's a big positive. I wrote about Kelvin Morrison this morning. Savon Huggins went out there and did a in-home visit with him on Monday as well. That went really well. I think. From what I understand, from talking to his coach, at least, like, the family really appreciated that, and I think it's going to go a long way with kind of. He's another guy that didn't get an offer maybe as early as he had hoped. Obviously, they had Kemon Spell committed. I think that played a big part in it, but it seems like they're gonna push really hard with Kelvin Morrison moving forward. I found one thing that was really interesting yesterday. It didn't get out there publicly, but you just connect the dots. Jake Waters was at the Baylor School in Tennessee, offered Braxton Rame. Well, you know who's at. You know who's at the Baylor School now, Sean, right?
The Croucher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think he was clearly down there to see Keegan Crozier yesterday. We know that they did it in-home with Peter Bork, or excuse me, in school. It's a boarding school, right? I think that was either late last week, early this week. I apologize. I forget exactly what day that took place. But, so they're clearly prioritizing some of the quarterbacks in the region. We saw, I think Waters offered, was it Will Mency, I believe, out in Arizona too. That was a new quarterback offer I got to catch up on here at some point as well. But I found that interesting to see him at, the Baylor School yesterday. That was clearly a visit targeted for Keegan Crozier. I would bet anything on.
Fitz, any of these that you're interested in, where they visited, who they visited?
No, I'm just second guessing because I've been calling him Croucher the entire time. It's
I thought it was Crozier, but I don't know, man.
We're gonna have to ask him at some point. Well, T. Frank, you should get on that.
I'll get on that.
You're a pronunciation guy. Not really. I mean, you look at where they're at, and they're all over the place, and a lot of that's positional recruiting. I don't think that they've really, they've got some connections in different parts of the country, and that makes it makes sense for at least 2027, 2028 to get into those, not hotbeds, but get into those certain spots where you've got great relationships with players, coaches, trainers, all that kind of stuff, and get around it. So I think that's really what you're saying for the most part. It's kind of a just be in sight type thing. You mentioned going to see Peter Bork, who's committed to Michigan. They'll go see him again, and like just kind of keep us in mind. Stay. Things change all the time, and they've certainly changed at Michigan. And maybe you can get your foot in the door there and see where you go. So I think they're still building out their board and kind of doing this all on the fly, which is on one hand terrifying, if you're a planner. On the other hand, it's pretty impressive to get around and figure out where they're going to go. But going back to what you asked about Matt Campbell's travel schedule, I think a lot of it's about convenience. A lot of it's about hitting as many different spots as you can to, stay on the radar. There's going to be schools where they go and they're not going to have a 2027 prospect, to maybe 28, 29, whatever.
Right.
But there are important stops for him to make as essentially a handshaker, a guy that, you have to put in appearances and make all that work. It's part of being a head coach now. So
first impressions with these staffs and schools. Yeah.
As Ryan mentioned, Pittsburgh, Philly, Jersey, they'll move to the DMV at some point, probably next week, I believe. So all of that stuff has to come together as a focus there. I mean, I don't think you're in a spot where, if you're Penn State, sometimes, at this time last year, any cycle before that, you were feeling good about getting commitments on board in the next couple of weeks. Right now, I think they're kind of just still getting their footing under them. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of movement with junior days, maybe snipe off a couple of kids here and there, but it's just different than what we're used to. And that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the first year. And so we're learning a lot of stuff together, and they're learning a lot of stuff together on the other side as well. Ryan, Fitz just gave us kind of a preview of what to expect. What are you looking for? What should Penn State fans expect from this particular weekend? What you're following, what you're going to be writing about over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, which, by the way, you can sign up for now. Just $1 for the first week of access to the site. So check us out. And Ryan, what will they be checking out from you? What are you working on?
A lot of top players coming to town, right? Just let's see how these first impressions go, and if anybody gets excited and makes a move. But there was going to be a ton to recap. Still kind of working on what that list is going to be. I think my actual count right now is like 14 or 15 or so when you include some 2028s, which I didn't even talk about. George Parkinson, who's coming up this past weekend or this upcoming weekend. Really good 2028 player. Yeah. I mean, Luke Wafel 2.0.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, they're like twins, man. So there's going to be a lot of really good players on campus, and let's see how those first impressions go. Like I said, there's going to be a bunch of, like I said, out of town kind of guys or out of region guys we're not used to. I didn't mention Kyler Kuhn coming in from Kansas City. He was actually at the Whiteout this past year. Has a good relationship with Clanton. Visited, I think Iowa State was actually his last visit he took for one of their final games. So lots of interesting players to watch. I just want to figure out how big this list is going to be, because right now I feel like I'm definitely missing some guys, but man, I've reached out to a ton of players that aren't coming. So is that a specific Penn State thing or what is it? Maybe I just got to reach out to more. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Fitz, what are you working on this week?
Sanity. No, I mean, recruiting stuff coming up this weekend. I think the portal is pretty well cut and dry. There's still a couple, loose ends to tie up, and we'll do that at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Somebody asked about Kemon Spell earlier and his status. We've talked a lot about that on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So just check us out. We've got a ton of stuff. Like we're spinning a lot of plates right now. Not necessarily the giant plate, but we're spinning a lot of plates right now on the site. So I don't know, man. That's what am I working on now is a loaded question, because being in this brain is it's a trip, man. Let me tell you. But there's a lot to follow up on, a lot to think about over the next couple of weeks. I'm right there with Ryan. I want to see how these junior days play out and whether this is the right, quote unquote, right way to go about them, with quality over quantity. And number 3, I want to make sure that my driveway is clear and these guys can get home as well. So weather always going to play a factor at this time of year, and this weekend no different. But the good news is it's supposed to snow everywhere, right? It's this is not just a Pennsylvania snowstorm, so it's going to wipe out some junior days along the way. Got some collateral damage with that whole weekend.
Well, if you're snowed in, good thing to do with your time is to visit BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, hang out with us on the site, because when Fitz does spin some stuff out of that brain, as he's been mentioned, it's good stuff. It's stuff you want to read. One last thing here, and I know I've asked you a lot of stuff. I mentioned, like the video, we have a new target based on some of the metrics and the data and the analytics. So if we get 500 likes on a show, typically that turns it into one of our best performing shows. Now, is it how does one lead the other? Obviously, there's been a lot of people watching this particular show. There's been over 500 people watching this show. So if everyone likes the video, you can help us to take one of our really great shows and make it one of our best shows. And if we do that enough times, the YouTube algorithm, the almighty algorithm, how it likes all its inputs and all those things. So if that's what we're going for each video, and I'll try to remind you of that, to our target goals, what we're trying to do here on the channel. It's tedious. It's the thing nobody wants to listen to. You want to listen to Penn State football talk, but it is a part of my job, and I would not be doing my job unless I asked you to do that. So thank you for that, and we'll be back next week with more live shows. I'll probably pop in with some more previews and thoughts here on the YouTube channel in video form over the next couple of days. I'm Thomas Rankar for Ryan Snyder and for Sean Fitz. We'll be back later. See you then.